It's a trap!
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
This is the Team of Rivals podcast.
Everything you want to hear from the big sports to the big screen.
He's all by himself, fires into the end zone. Caught! Touchdown! No! Vaughn into the windup in his first offering. Just a bit outside. He tried the corner and missed.
He doesn't like you. I don't like you either.
Time winding down, Michael for three. Yes! She is gone! I don't believe what I just saw. Go crazy, folks! Go crazy! You believe in miracles?
You may fire when ready.
What?
Hey, we're back. Thursday, August 20th. Team of Rivals podcast. It's been a while. We've got all three of us back online. And the Cubs and Cardinals finally played a series this week. 5 games. And I mean, it really couldn't have been a much better turnout. The Cubs win the series 3 games out of 5. Joining me tonight, as always, Elliott and Ron, calling in from North Carolina and Sandwich, Illinois. Elliott, the Earl of Sandwich, former state wrestling champion, even though he doesn't like to say it. But come on, man. Live in your power. Anyway,
I will
we'll
at
talk
some
about.
point.
Okay, good. Tonight, we'll talk about the Cardinals coronavirus layoff, Trevor Bauer, Mets positives, Fernando Tatis Jr. hitting a grand slam on a 3-0 count, and our favorite broadcaster.
Really?
Looks like he's going to be standing in the unemployment line.
Enough already.
Time to find a new job, Tommy. But let's get to what's at hand, gentlemen. Cubs and Cardinals played 5 games in 3 days, 2 doubleheaders on Monday and Wednesday night, with the exception of, I think, 1 game, relatively closely contested series, although both teams were operating with their hands tied behind their back a little bit. The Cardinals obviously missing some players who hadn't yet cleared the protocols and gotten back into game shape. The Cubs suffering a little bit of pitching injuries in their rotation and kind of having to makeshift it. Elliott, let's start with you. Impressions.
It was a decent series. If I had like one takeaway from the whole series, it would be Ian Happ. Ian Happ has been excellent. I mean, and we talked about this during the offseason. And saying that, he looked good at the end of last year. Hopefully he can continue this trend coming into the season. We really weren't sure about that. And it seems that he has. It seems that he's taken a much needed patience at the plate, stopped swinging at those high fastballs that had doomed him and sent him down to the minors, cut down on those strikeouts, and has just been a really, really solid switch hitting batter. And as Ron would say, Bodie!
Oh, man, that guy. Yeah, well, I mean, we've got a lot to unpack here as far as being able to watch your team play again, because it's obviously been I've had a little time off, and it has been hard to watch other baseball. And at the same time, it's been hard to listen to other people talk about their teams actually playing. But I've been a good sport about it, I guess. But I mean, there's a reality to how they performed, and I think that coming back from such a delay, and I know we'll get into it maybe at some point in time, Pete. We're kind of following your lead tonight, but if you would have told me, hey, they're going to split 8 games in Chicago, coming out for like a 17-day layoff, being stuck in hotel rooms and not really even being able to practice or work out. Okay, I'd probably walk away from that fine. I'll take it. And ultimately, that's what happened. I think a couple games they could have got away from him a little bit, but you take inventory of everything that's happened. You're like, okay, cool. We're back in St. Louis tonight. We're down, but it's 2020, man. I don't know what else to tell you.
I agree, man. And we'll get into this a little later, but we kind of had our fingers crossed because after the initial waves of positive tests out of St. Louis, it looked like, hey, maybe we controlled this. And then all of a sudden tonight, not long before we come on here, pops up that there are a couple of positive tests out in New York. And that, I know we said it when this happened with the Cardinals, but that ultimately could spell the end of the baseball season if there's an outbreak in New York. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Greg raises a good point, Elliott, and I want to ask you about it. And Ron will also throw it to you just to get your impressions. But what do you think? Is Ian Happ's emergence sustainable? Is this something that is real, or is this another small sample fluke that he experienced at the end of the year last year and that he is experiencing now, but that ultimately he's going to be exposed? What do you think?
That's a good question. If he keeps taking this approach, I think it's sustainable because he's doing something that we've never seen him do before, where he's doing what Rizzo does. He chokes up on the bat when he has 2 strikes. He shortens up that swing, and he's just looking to make contact, where before you still saw him taking those huge swings and striking out. So I do think it's sustainable.
And there was a little spike right before the series where his strikeout numbers were ticking back up. But yeah, you're right. He seemed to make that adjustment. And I think ultimately with Ian Happ, that's the question is, can he make those adjustments quickly in season? Right. Because previously when pitchers adjusted to him, he wasn't able to adjust back in any kind of a timely manner. And that's ultimately why he got sent down. Ron, watching Ian Happ in this series, what were your thoughts as an opposing team?
Well, I mean,
a fan of the opposing team.
Yeah. So there's always those players you're going to run into, and he's dialed in right now. I mean, look, let's look at what's happened here. I could downplay this and say, well, what kind of pitching was he facing really, right? From the Cardinals, they had so many replacements. I could throw that out there. Don't quite buy it because Ian Happ we know is really talented. We know he has some pop in his bat, and he can. I don't know if he's a streaky player or not, guys. I haven't watched him enough, but you'd be able to tell me. He's hot right now. I think your point was well made, Pete, about, the first time through the league, look, we're getting to see something similar with Tommy Edman. I'm not saying they're similar as far as power goes, but Tommy Edman's first time around the league last year was pretty good. The league has a book on him now, and he's off to a little bit of a slow start this year. Now, hey, look, they've only played 9 games. I don't know how much you can really glean from that. But we're kind of seeing the same thing maybe with Tommy Edman. I don't know. Ian Happ's always been an impressive player. Consistency, I know, has been his issue. Just making contact, a lot of strikeouts. Boy, I tell you what, if you could encapsulate baseball in a player, he'd be one of them, right? Lots of strikeouts, a little bit of contact, streaky player. Just a lot of things going on in this game that, guys, we're going to sound like a broken record from last year if we keep going. But too many walks, too many strikeouts. Just baseball nowadays, and unfortunately, I think Tim Huve made the point on me last night on Twitter that unfortunately, boring baseball sometimes comes out on top, and that's true these days, I guess. But Ian Happ's a nice player. If he could pull it together and make the adjustments as you're speaking to, I think he could be a pretty nice player for someone on another team.
My one concern with him, honestly, is the fact that he's obviously new to the position, but he doesn't exactly take very good routes to the ball out there in center field. And it's one thing if you take bad routes in the corners, but when you're supposed to be the captain of the outfield, you need to make efficient routes. It's bad enough that the Cubs have an improving Kyle Schwarber in left field. But still, he doesn't take great routes either. And can either of them make up with the bat what they leave out there with the glove? And it's one thing if you have one defensive deficiency out in the outfield. And the outfield, obviously, you get exposed more easily. But if you've got 2 of them and they're right next to each other, that makes it tough.
Yeah, because right field, right to right center, you easily have covered with Hayward, right? He can make up he can make up for a not so great or below average center fielder. If you have a left fielder that's competent, you can definitely get away with it. Now, can you slug your way past a defensive deficit you have anywhere on the diamond? Sure, you can. When we see it happen all the time, and they're certainly capable of doing that. I know Schwarber's not. First of all, he almost killed a Cardinal player last night. I don't know how the hell that guy caught that line drive. He could have died. But Schwarber's they both have the capability of I think bludgeoning their way past the holes in their glove. I know that for sure, but how many of those do you have roaming around your diamond on a given day, right? Defense can hurt you. The Cardinals last year, they finished on top of the division because of run prevention. Defense had a lot to do with that. They had one of the best defenses in baseball. They had a solid pitching staff. It's easy to argue that they probably had a top 8, maybe even top 5 pitching staff last year. And defense and pitching was good enough for them to win the division when you had other teams playing with some inconsistencies. So we know that can work. However, that's not the most fun baseball to watch. It's better when you have it all, right? I mean, gosh, you guys have had a team at least one year that was defensively, offensively, and pitching, and that stuff's fun. That stuff's more fun to watch. But yeah, I don't know,
Elliott. Right now, the Cubs are at last check, they're ranked second in defensive runs saved. So one of the two is an illusion. Is it the DRS that they're currently sporting that's hiding the fact that their outfield defense is a fraught proposition with every game? Or is it that maybe we're just selling Ian Happ and Kyle Schwarber a little short?
I tell you what, Matt Carpenter is not going to be selling Schwarber's arm short.
That wasn't even close, man.
He played that ball perfectly.
Well,
off
that was a
the
perfect
wall
hop right to him. Yep.
It's just gunned him. I mean, and we saw this from Schwarber last year, where there was some players who tested his arm, and more often than not, Schwarber got them.
Well, I think a lot of people forget he was a catcher, and especially fans watching. They don't remember that. That was a perfect hop, though. And I don't know if he knew that was going to happen or if it was a little bit of luck played in that. But I will say that Matt Carpenter, he's not the fleetest of foot on the team, and he's not that great of a base runner. And you know what? I'm not looking at numbers right now. Number guys are probably throwing Baseball Reference at me right now, saying, yes, he is. I've got this saying he's actually above average. But I've seen him too many times try to stretch something out and get taken out. I attended a game live at Busch Stadium, extra innings. He leads off with what was a sure double, tried to stretch it to a triple, and got his ass thrown out, I think, by Hunter Pence. And Hunter Pence throwing you out is something else, right? I mean, I don't even know that guy. I'm surprised. Hunter Pence probably could have thrown him out by just going into a rage and running to third base from left field and got it.
So, Ron, it's been, a week? What are your impressions of Dylan Carlson so far?
Well,
are you worried by what you're seeing in the stat lines?
I mean, you can be. You can definitely get yourself worried. But I'm also looking at, that, not the day. Well, there were a couple of games against Chicago where I don't believe he had a hit. And I think one of them he had a hit. But, he had some loud outs. And the Cubs they've scouted him pretty well, evidently, because there were a couple balls that he centered, he hit well, and they had him play perfectly. The line drive up the middle, I don't know how the hell Baez even saw that because he was standing behind the pitcher, but he got it, and he got a force out at home plate. That's a hit almost any other night, right? But they're shifting on him, and he's hitting right into it. So, he's had some strikeouts. Look, this is showing me perhaps why, and I know Cardinal fans don't want to, most don't feel this way, and that's fine. They thought he should have been up from day one. We might be seeing why they held off a little bit. Like, this guy only played a short amount of time in Memphis last year. He didn't spend a whole lot of time in AAA. It might not have been a bad thing. Right now, I know it's not normal. It's hard to remember what normal was like, but he'd be in Memphis. He would have started the season in Memphis in order to get these at-bats down. He's not seasoned yet. He hasn't seen a lot of this off-speed stuff, and I'm not making excuses for him. He's a professional ball player, but, perhaps he wasn't quite ready. He's kind of been thrown into it now because of COVID. He was brought up because Lane Thomas tested positive and had to go on the IL. That's why he's up here. But they thought, well, while he's up here, we're going to play him. Your alternative right now is Harrison Bader. And I tell you what, he looks like shit. And I don't know that he is even a major league ball player. I don't know what he's doing at the plate. He's better than I ever was or ever could have imagined. Let's just make that clear right now. Like he's better looking, faster. He's got everything on me. But we've watched a lot of baseball throughout the years, Pete. I'm not feeling it from him that he's a major league ball player. On a lot of rosters he'd be in the minor leagues right now. Well, actually, he'd be in training camps right now, or Site B. But I don't feel that he's.
Do you think that's going to determine what the Cardinals do at this upcoming trade deadline?
I don't know that they're going to go looking for outfield help at all, because they still have 4 or 5 guys that can play there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, look, unless an opportunity came up where you've got a surefire all-star, I'm not talking Mike Trout, that's batshit crazy, but I'm talking if you had somebody that was competent, you knew what you were getting out of them, they were like, clockwork every year. If an opportunity like that popped up, you take you do everything you can to improve your ball club. I don't think the outfield is where they're going to look. To me, right now, with the hits their pitching staff has taken, and thank God they've had the depth they've had, I think the trade deadline is only going to produce an arm or two at most. I don't think they're going to do anything offensively. Yeah, it's going to send Cardinals fans in an uproar because his offense still doesn't look very good, but I just don't see them pulling anything off for a position player. Unless Colorado, once again, wants to toy around and dangle Nolan Arenado out there, I don't know what St. Louis can offer for him right now.
I don't see any big names getting moved at this trade deadline.
No.
Because if the season doesn't finish, and I don't think that's going to happen, Ron. Sorry to break your heart.
Well, it's not going to break my heart. It's really not. I know that they've got an answer in a few years, perhaps at third base, if he ends up at third base, and that would be Nolan Gorman. So their desperation to bring in somebody like that with a heavy contract isn't maybe what some other clubs might be experiencing. So they think they have an answer for a future at third base. Of course, if you talk to other Cardinals fans, he might not end up being a third baseman. He could actually end up being first or maybe a corner outfield spot. But right now, he's a third baseman. There's a couple other names around down in the mind. Here's the other thing too: is they have Edmundo Sosa, who's a pretty good shortstop. They have Elhuris Montero, who's another infielder, good third baseman that they have in the system. Many think that over time, one of those guys will step in at short, and DeYoung will actually move over to third. So I don't look. Nolan Arenado is a name. You put that in your club, and you put that in the lineup. That's going to draw some people to the ballpark. That's going to sell some jerseys. So I don't rule anything like that out. I just don't think they don't have the need enough to offer a ridiculous package for him, where another team that needs him more can offer or is willing to give up a lot more. I just don't think. I don't see it.
To where they're at like he's the last piece. Right.
Yeah.
They're a contender, and he would put him over the top.
Well, he'd put a lot of clubs over the top, but
he would.
I don't see St. Louis giving up what other teams probably would. I don't see them doing that. So ultimately, I don't see him in a Cardinals uniform.
All right. So since you kind of raised it real quick, guys, without thinking, who's the worst Major League center fielder, National League Central edition? Albert Almora Jr. or Harrison Bader? Elliott, go.
No, it's Bader.
Ron.
Defensively or all around?
All around. Who contributes less to the team?
I've seen some more spectacular plays from Almora. He robbed a couple Cardinals of hits. I got to go with Bader. That he has
the
to do worse
correct answer.
Right now.
Albert Almora Jr. You are seeing him in his last year as a Chicago Cub.
Okay, well, you might be seeing Bader his last year in St. Louis as well. So I don't know. That's a push, I guess. But
do you think he goes to Memphis this year?
I don't know what his option status is that's left. So he could. I think he does have some left, but I don't imagine that. I don't know, man. In a short season like this, I don't think so, because you're going to get Lane Thomas back here shortly, which could move Carlson perhaps back down to Springfield. Maybe not. Maybe they keep him up and say, look, at times he's hitting the ball fine, and we're going to roll with it. It's 2020. If we're going to get stupid, let's just do it now and keep him up. You've already brought him up. You've already started his clock, and you've only got 50 some games left, right? Or not even maybe, but so you keep him up there. You get him some playing time, You got Lane Thomas. You got Tyler O'Neill, who's off to a pretty nice start. You've got Dexter Fowler, who's been actually playing pretty good.
Yeah.
So you got answers there. Look, I think Bader stays up there because, look, the one thing I'm confident bringing him in for, bring him in to pinch run for Fowler late in the game, then move him in the outfield for the 9th inning or 7th inning if you got a doubleheader. I think that's a capacity I like to see him used in right now. I just don't. None of us like to see him start at the moment. Look, and I know people. There's big fans of his, and he's got, he takes wonderful selfies, and he's got cool hair, and he's cute little Bader tots. I get it, man, but I'm sorry, I'm not on your train. I just don't see enough from the guy.
All right, Elliott. Last thing that we'll talk about that related to the series, and then we can move on a little bit. Did we see the return of Craig Kimbrel over the last 3 days?
I was impressed. His fastball was up in the high 90s. He was using it to bait the hitters into swinging at that curveball. I hope he's got it figured out because the last 3 games he looks like he's got it figured out.
Ron,
yeah.
If this is the return of Craig Kimbrel, how sick does this make you
Well,
as a Cardinals fan?
I mean, you know what? It really doesn't. He's a closer. He's a damn good one. He's historically been a really good one. I think he had a confidence problem, not being signed and being delayed entering his season last year. And he started off in an odd circumstance, new city, new team, and expectations were high, right? Because hey, we're expecting to come in here. We're going to see this same Craig Kimbrel we always have. I think the pressure was on him, and when teams got to him often and well, just say often they got to him. I think that he took a hit to his confidence. Now, what I saw in the last game he pitched against the Cardinals was very reminiscent of the Craig Kimbrel you would expect to get, right? Now, look, he's facing Max Schrock. Max Schrock didn't know what the fuck he was looking at. He saw a hard slider I guarantee you he's never seen before. So what happens when a hitter has never seen the pitcher? Usually the pitcher has the advantage, right? None of these young guys have ever seen him. So I think when you start facing down a team like, when he's able to do that against a team like Cincinnati and Milwaukee, guys that have been there for a while, they've got a lot more veterans on those teams. If he's able to mow down a lineup like that or shut the door on teams like that, then man, I'd say he's back. I would only use a little bit of caution though. Some of those Cardinal players are very young. They've never seen stuff like that before.
Although the one counter to that I would say is he faced the same 3 batters the night before. So they had an opportunity to see him, and if anything, they looked more baffled last night.
Oh, you're right. I could face Craig Kimbrel once, and the next time have him all figured out. No.
No, apparently some of the issue, and I don't doubt that the confidence thing was a part of it, but apparently he'd been toying around with this changeup for a while, trying to add that to his pitch mix, and it seems that it may have altered his delivery. And that his release point had changed. And so that was affecting everything. That's why he wasn't able to get the same velocity. And he may have been tipping his pitches too, that because of the alteration in his release point, that the knuckle curve was coming from a completely different place from the fastball. And so it was really easy to identify the pitches and then to just spit on the curve and wait for the fastball. But I think it'll just be more to come, and we wait and see what lies ahead for Craig Kimbrel. Moving on, gentlemen. Ron, what was it like sitting there for 2 weeks and not being able to root for your team? Was it a nice break? I mean, you were gone for a week anyway, on vacation, but was it a break? Did it give you a chance to recharge, or were you chomping at the bit even more?
Well, the timing worked in my favor, I guess. Vacation lined up with the next day after they got put on the shelf again. So at least for 7 days, I didn't have to think about it too much. But yeah, when coming back, I mean, there's nothing, you return home and the weekend's coming up. And one of the things I enjoy most about the season is just whether it's a Saturday afternoon or an evening game or whatever, that I can put it on, even if it's the radio, if it's the audio version, at least have it on in the background while I'm doing something. That part I missed a lot. And even during the week when they should have been playing a night game, I missed that a lot too. So I wasn't dying, but here's the problem, guys. We went so long with this season being delayed anyway. All of us have found we've found alternatives to entertain ourselves. We found other things and other interests to get us by. I had to find that all over again. And the problem is I got used to not having baseball. So while I know what's going on, and maybe I tune in an inning or two games that happen to be on MLB.TV or something that's on MLB Network or one of the other regional channels that I might get out here. I might flip by them, but I'm telling you guys, I wasn't dying without it. In fact, there was more concern to me. Look at it. When Cincinnati had a positive test, I'm looking at the schedule. This is the first time I got myself like plugged back in. I looked at it and I go, well, they're going to miss a lot of games. If they have to miss that series against Cincinnati coming up after missing all of these, I don't know how the hell they even get near 50 games, right? And my concern has been, how are they going to get to 50 games? They've got so many doubleheaders on the schedule, very few off days, like 2 that I could just quickly scanning the next 6 weeks. They got like 2 off days. Like there's no room. I mean, you physically run out of days and you run out of time where you can possibly travel to another city and fit in another doubleheader if you miss something. So I don't know, man. It was a lot of nervousness about how the hell they're even going to make it up. And is it going to be fair? If they're only able to get in 50 games and everybody else plays somewhere approximately around 60, are they really going to go by win percentage? Because I tell you what, people in a 60-game season, if you're playing 10 games less, but you happen to end up with a better percentage, I don't know if I'd like that as another ball club, right? If we end up going off of that. So, one, how are they going to make it up? What's going to happen for future rainouts or anything else like that? Second is, I got used to not having baseball if I found other shit to do.
What was it like watching the Cardinals just sit there for 2 weeks?
Well, I mean, it affected us for a weekend, which was super disappointing because I was totally looking forward to that series that weekend. So, I mean, you start the season, you start playing baseball, you're like, yes, okay, this is great, and then all of a sudden it just yanks the rug underneath you. And I mean, I felt bad for Cardinals fans, only because it affected me.
Really? That was the most. And Elliott, you weren't there, and we did it with the guys from the Cubs Cards cast, but that was the most wind out of your sail moment I've experienced in a long time. We're all charged up in just a matter of hours. They're going to be back out on the field, facing off again. And then just to hear that it was already postponed and you knew the damn weekend would be postponed. It was, Pete, that was a shit feeling that day, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah. I got on and had no idea what the hell you guys were talking about. That was a gut punch.
Yep.
That absolutely was a gut punch. Yeah. Ron, I agree with you. I think that it's going to be real tough if the Cardinals make it in by win percentage, and knock out a team that played 6 more games than they did.
Yeah. There is something about, hey, that's not fair. On the flip side of that, if I kind of flip the script on that a bit, I say, look, whether and ultimately I think the casino theory was kind of blown up, but regardless, something happened where they got exposed, right? They could have been following all protocols, being as safe as they possibly could. Somebody asymptomatic, a staffer, anybody could have been, all it takes is one, and we see what happens, right? And we're going to probably see the same thing out here in New York, which we haven't got to really yet. Even if you believed that, in 2020 you go, well, shit, look at how this year's gone anyway, right? This year reminds me of the ball that hit Anthony Rizzo that he swung at. That's 2020. That ball is 2020.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And you alluded to it, Ron, so we might as well jump on it right before we came on the show. And Greg reacted to it in the chat. The New York Mets have, at last check, 2 positive tests for coronavirus, 1 player and 1 staff member. And based on what we saw happen in the Marlins clubhouse, based on what we saw happen in the Cardinals clubhouse, this is not the end of it.
There'll be more. And there'll be more. And there'll be 4 or 5 days down the road, another positive test will come. And yeah.
Didn't they say that the rest of the team traveled, though, and the 2 that tested positive stayed?
I haven't read it yet, Elliott, so I don't know the detail. But that happened to the Cardinals, too. Those 2 additional positive tests they had, I believe one was Ryan Helsley, the other one was a coach. They were isolated by the time they had tested positive, and so that's why it didn't delay them any further. Because when I heard that before more detail came out, I'm like, holy shit, they're not coming back for 3 weeks. But you're right, Pete. There will be a few more that'll pop up, if not a bunch. So But I don't know, Elliott. I haven't seen this other part where they were already in isolation. So maybe you're right. Maybe this actually won't impact them very much. But they're still going to take a few days. They're going to take a few days to contact trace and everything before they do anything, though.
There was an update on Bleacher Nation that said this probably won't preclude a postponement, at least tomorrow, but Mets have already been cleared to travel, which is surprising. Yeah. So the two stayed back and everybody else traveled.
Well, no, they didn't. I'm reading the same thing. Apparently, the Mets flew back from Miami tonight, other than the people who are positive and those who are not delayed by the contact tracing. So what that means is they're trying to trace who these guys were in contact with.
Yep.
So if you were in contact with the guys who tested positive, you're not traveling right now.
Yeah.
So you're probably going to see, if they're able to determine that they were able to contain it, you're going to see a Mets team taking on the Yankees with a bunch of guys called up from their alternate site.
Yeah. Which I think is smart on the Mets side.
When you talk about the integrity of the season, forcing the Mets to continue to play with, who knows, 8 guys from their alternate site against a team like the Yankees that already doesn't need that kind of help. If I'm a team that is surprisingly playing well, like L's Orioles, I'm calling foul. Do I get to play the Mets with eight minor leaguers? So
well, I mean,
could have
you could say the same thing. I mean, you could say the same thing against the Cubs, right? Like you played against our how did I term it last night? Our Memfield Lewis Cardinals. You beat them, and so anybody can say that, but you're right, Pete. But that's why I look at this and go, okay, so there has to be, I think, to make it. Here he is. To make it a little bit to make this whole thing a little bit more fair, I think that there has to be a bar set of how many games has to be played. I don't know what that number needs to be. 50 seems too low. If they can get somewhere 53, 55, somewhere in that range, it feels like a little bit, it feels better. I just don't know what that needs to be, but they've had to talk about this. And if they didn't talk about it when it happened to the Marlins, they had to talk about it when it happened to St. Louis. Make up as many as you possibly can, guys, but you got to at least hit this many or you're not qualified to make the playoffs. That's the only thing that feels right to me. And a 60 games.
I mean,
go ahead.
By comparison, Ron, in a 162 game season, that would be like saying to a team, "Oh, you only played 135 games. That's okay." We would never stand for 135 games. Be like, are you kidding? Everything that could have happened in those games.
Yeah.
Nobody would be happy with that.
Well, even six games is 10% of a year, right? So, what is it? They've got to talk about a minimum of some sort. I mean, when you have, like I said, the example I just laid out, the Cardinals missed a ton of games. What if another team from the Central gets it? Then that series that's scheduled with the Cardinals gets postponed. The Cardinals not only have to make up what they missed, they've got to make up that now. And I'd be really surprised if anybody from the Central here actually gets to 60. I don't know that that's even possible. If something else happens, I think he left.
And that's what I wonder about. And I alluded to it before. I wonder if this might not be the final straw, depending on how well they're able to contain this. Because the East has already taken a hit because of the Marlins. So if the East's schedule gets screwed up again now because of the Mets, we're really deep into the season, and time's running out on being able to make up games. And I just wonder if we're running out of time.
It sure feels like, well, I don't know. If there's another outbreak within, I think there's another outbreak within the Central, it's going to get real tough when you've got a team like the Cardinals that are trying to make up so much ground right now. I don't know how.
Especially if it affects their schedule too.
Right.
And I'll tell you, the astounding thing for me also is that the West has not had any cases yet. And when you look at it, currently the highest contact or the highest infection rate in the United States is in California.
Mm-hmm.
Way to go, California. And they've got, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4 teams?
Yeah. Just 4.
No, 5. They got 5. Oakland, San Francisco, LA, Anaheim, and San Diego. They got 5
Oh,
teams.
I usually think of the Padres as not part of the United States. Okay.
Major League Baseball.
Yeah. Sorry. I ruled them out.
They're the Cardinals 4A squad.
Rule 5ers, baby. Let's buy our
But
way in every
seriously,
4 years.
5 teams out in California. You're pretty much guaranteeing that there's a series going on every night in California.
Yeah.
And for there to have not been any infections in either of the Western divisions, that's astounding. I just worry that if we get one more, that there's not going to be enough time to make up the season.
I still think that they're looking at this like we should have been able to figure out a bubble scenario in 3 locations: East, West, and Central. It depends on. I guess it depends on how much, if this gets any worse or if it gets worse at all. But they've got to be looking at this going, "What the fuck, man? Why couldn't we have just done what the NBA and the NHL have done? Because that appears, at least, to be worse. Unless something's happened in the last 24 hours. I don't know about it, but
Yeah, the Midwest could have just gone up to Omaha, Nebraska, and played on the College World Series.
What does it matter where you play at this point?
Yeah.
Right. The problem is that you have to figure out a schedule for 30 teams, and neither the NBA nor the NHL had to do that because they were able to eliminate 8 teams immediately.
Regionally, you only had to do it for 10, right? If you did it East, West, and Central, you only have to do it for 10 teams. I think very doable. 2 parks can support 5 games. Take Milwaukee and Chicago if they want to do it there. I'm talking about North Side and Milwaukee. And if you easily played 3.
You could use the South Side too.
Right.
Why would you want to do that?
South Side, Milwaukee. Yeah.
If your goal was to simply get to the playoffs, then just say this year we're abandoning the traditional division format. We're setting up 4 bubbles. Nobody cares. We're setting up 4 bubbles, and we're taking the 16 best teams.
Could have called it the Norris
We're going to take
division.
4 teams from each bubble.
Yeah, Norris division. They could have brought the hockey divisions back, right?
Hey,
that'd have been cool.
That would have been fun.
Yeah.
Although you'd be making references that nobody remembers anymore because nobody is as old as
you know
we
what
are,
I meant. I mean, here I go. Look, there is one professional sports team that the name I actually miss, and that was the Minnesota North Stars. That was the best fit for a hockey name in a very northern city. I loved that name. Then they're the Dallas Stars.
Yeah.
What the hell? First of all, Minnesota, how did you manage to lose a fucking NHL team? How? How is that possible? They had the perfect name, cool jerseys, and they go to Dallas, and they survive and thrive in Dallas as the Dallas Stars. Oh, real original, Texas, the Star, whatever. Man, come on. I guess, you know what? I guess a worst case, a scenario that's worse than that is there's been many Canadian cities that have lost NHL teams, I guess. But, I mean, I think about that. It's like, fuck, that. How do you manage to do that? How? Now you're the Minnesota Wild. I would have said, please give us the name
It's
back.
almost like, how does St. Louis end up losing an NFL team?
Oh, that's easy. Well, you know what? At some point in time, we open this back up. Perhaps later on, I'll bring a guy in that knows a lot of shit about this. And St. Louis didn't lose that team. That thing was fixed years before they were told they had a chance to keep the team. That thing was rigged from the beginning. It's going to come out. They have lost at every battle trying to keep this shit out of court. They have lost every one of them. And the NFL is going to be bent over a barrel. They're going to be forced to. It's probably going to be settled, and we'll never hear the detail. But part of that settlement, I suspect, and through others, is that they'll either be promised an expansion team. They won't take another relocation. I don't think the people or the city have any appetite to have any other shithead transplant team. They don't want it. It will be an expansion team if they even want that. Or they could say, your settlement's nice. By the way, Kroenke, the guy behind it, he's got to pay all the other NFL teams legal fees until this shit's over. Can I get a mulligan on this? Because, now and then he runs it, and then he's still building his stadium during a pandemic. Guys are getting sick on site there. There was something else, some chemical or something in the ground. I mean, they're going to get everything they deserve. And by the way, you're sharing a stadium with the Rams. You halfway ripped off their new logo for your helmet. It's like a lightning bolt struck a goddamn ram horn, and that's what you came up with. I mean, look, nothing against those players or anything. It was the St. Louis Rams. I wasn't anchored to it. I really didn't care because unfortunately I'm a Bears fan. The kid on patiently on hold right now. He's probably pissed at me because I've had him on mute the whole time. He's a Packers fan, but St. Louis. Look, I only say this. Look, St. Louis. People can say that. Hey, St. Louis lost a team. I don't think so, man. I think they had one taken out from under them this time.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the way that kind of happened in the dark of night, it was almost as bad as when the Colts left Baltimore,
or the Browns left Cleveland.
Yeah.
Which is a basis on some of the. I guess if you're a reporter, you're investigating this stuff. Those are the two that you're looking at, and going back to laws and how everything went down, and you're checking in with municipalities who remembers anything about this, and that's what they're uncovering. People that are looking into this, and fortunately, it really tells you something else, Pete. Media is not talking about it, right? That's how much power the NFL has. Is the media is not talking about it. It's not showing up anywhere. You only see it out of like St. Louis, out of the Post-Dispatch. Not even Post-Dispatch is above it, evidently. But you only hear smaller news outlets that bring this up, and it's going to be a big story if it's not settled. Football talk.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Foosball.
Is he coming? Is he joining the show or not?
He's on. He can talk right now. I've actually have his volume up, Braden.
So I decided for the rest of this Red series, I'm not going to watch a single game.
Oh shit!
Why is
7-4.
Because
wait, that's the hits. It's 4-2 still.
Every game that I watched from the Cubs, every time I watched, they lost, and every time I didn't watch, they won. So
keep watching, Braden. Keep watching.
Nope. I'm done.
Well, that's Braden. That's because you were tuning in for Cardinals home games.
That's right.
I decided not to watch the first game of the last doubleheader. They smoked them 9-3. I was like, great. I'll watch the second game, the last game.
Should have known better. That's the way it works.
And they choke. So you know what? Yeah. I'm done taking a break. You know what? Corona sucks. Cardinals need to figure out their things. I'm just gonna cry myself to sleep because it's heartbreaking.
Well, it's not that heartbreaking, but what's I'll be honest with you. As much as like I'm not torn up by the losses too much this year, guys. I'm just thankful that we've got something to watch. But there would have been nothing better to just see a walk-off home run for the home team at Wrigley Field wearing birds on a bat. But that would have been odd. It was odd enough anyway that the home team's wearing grays. I don't know why I get why they didn't do that. It'd be silly to say, no, you got to wear home colors in Chicago. I would have loved to have seen it,
right.
though. I would have loved to have seen a walk-off.
We need you guys to bring the full complement of your uniforms because we're going to require you to change from gray to white and back again throughout this series. I mean, yeah, it would have been ridiculous.
Well, and the funny thing was they didn't even get their music, like their walk-up music played. The Cubs are still getting that, and then the Cardinals were getting,
guys,
we're getting the...
Whoa, hang on. We did not talk about this. Because I didn't know about it the last time we did one of these live shows. Funny shit. That catcher for the Blue Jays that got arrested or ticketed for jerking off in his car. Sorry, Braden. In a parking lot. In his car, they go play Atlanta. His walk-up music by Oregon was Beat It.
You're going to have to go in after the fact and lay that in on the audio podcast.
This is the same.
I wish I would have had it queued up.
This is the same organist that played Go Cubs Go when all the Bryce Harper talk was happening of him going to the Cubs.
That, you know what? Kudos to that organ player. One, for being look. I imagine there's a lot of there's a fair amount of whoever's in charge of the music and everything else at a ballpark that's just kind of not aware of news that's happened within the sport.
Right.
But hey, kudos to the Atlanta person for one, even knowing how to play that on organ, but even having the wherewithal to, hey, he's coming up to bat. Guess what I'm going to do? It's just brilliant.
Yeah. It's the perfect troll job. It's like you really can't get mad at the organist for playing that because it is so slight. I mean, he probably didn't even think about it until after he was up to bat. He's like, did that motherfucker play beat it?
I'm thinking the same thing. At the moment in time he's walking up to the plate, he's not listening to it. They hear walk-up music and organ music all the time, so he's not paying attention to it. He found out after the fact. His
teammates were waiting for him when he came back into the dugout, right?
Yeah.
You heard he played when you walked up? Because he caught shit.
Oh, God. Can you believe that?
Oh, my God. Like,
he probably had
there was a tube of lube in his locker every day for a week.
Like dirty magazines and
yep. Oh, yeah. Maybe a car shield, a window shield. So, hey, why don't you try one of these next time so the whole world can't see you? So my
all right, gentlemen, it's getting late, so let's get to the remaining interesting things that are on. Where do we go first? Fernando Tatis or Thom Brennaman? Let's save the cherry for the top of the cake.
Yep.
Fernando Tatis caught a lot of shit because he swung at a 3-0 meatball and crushed a grand slam. Where you guys fall on this one?
Hey, B, why don't you take this one first? I know you're aware of this. Let's get a 15-year-old's take on this after we just talked about a Blue Jays catcher getting arrested for masturbating in his car and then hearing organ beat it music. So might as well just let you go first. I forgot you were on.
Well, you know what? I got a little message to the Texas manager. You know what? You might as well put on a Christmas sweater if you're going to be a snowflake. I mean, come on. Good Lord. Are you really? Does your team really suck that bad that you're going to be mad that one of the best players in baseball swings an absolute fastball right down the middle and crushes it? Like, I'm sorry your team sucks. Who cares if you're up 7? He's the best player in baseball. He's a young kid. He's got swagger. He's going to swing. I mean, come on. Any guy with a brain would swing at that. And you know what? I don't know what's worse, the Texas manager or the guy for apologizing. Like, you know what? I mean, what's up with people being snowflakes? I mean, would you like a cup of hot chocolate with that too? I mean, come on. How old are you? 5? Like,
okay.
That guy's more dramatic than my 2 brothers fighting upstairs over a Nerf gun war. I mean, come on. Like, good Lord.
Those are legit fights, though, Braden. Those are rage. But I think somehow I think we're all going to run parallel with him. But go ahead, Pete. Take us around for opinions on this one.
Yeah, I'm just going to weigh in right now. I don't have the only problem that I have with this whole thing is, and this is especially coming from a Cubs fan. I mean, we were rejoicing when Addison Russell got sent down last year because he was missing signs. Look, Tatis supposedly was given the take sign and he didn't take. And that's something that, especially young players are not supposed to miss. If your manager gave you a sign and you either missed it or you ignored it, dude, that's not cool. That having been said, come on, man. You're the manager. You take care of that behind closed doors. You don't sell your player out after the fact. You stand up for him and then you pull him aside afterwards and say, hey, look, I gave you a take sign. And if you missed it, you need to focus during the game because that's what we're here for. And you're going to get away with it this time, but that shit isn't going to play when we're playing better teams and you miss a sign. Because if you miss a sign on the bases, we're going to lose the game.
Yeah.
And we can't afford that. My favorite take on the whole thing was Steven Souza. Okay. If I'm not supposed to swing 3-0, then I expect you to groove a fastball for me 0-2.
There,
you're never going to see that.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty good point. I mean, Elliott, if you don't mind, I'm just going to go now because this is the second time I've answered this. I answered it earlier in the week on that 2 Birds on a Bat show I do on Tuesday because it happened the night before, and they said they're going to bring it up, and I had to hurry up and watch it real quick. I didn't even know about the story, but when I saw it, I'm like, look, and I played a fair amount too. And there's, this unwritten rule thing, I get it, and it goes a little bit into sportsmanship, right? Because you've got to, first of all, in professional baseball, you got to face teams like 18 times, especially within your own division. You pull some shit in one game, and you do understand we got to play them 12 more times this year, right? And you upset some people. There's a point where you don't steal a bag up by 9 runs. You don't lay down a bunt up by 9 runs. It's perfectly fine. It's actually within the rules. You can do that stuff. There's just something to it where, okay, look, you got us this game. We're just trying to finish it out. You don't have to run up the score. I get that kind of stuff. Here, though, you've got a hitter, right? Pete, your point's absolutely valid. He missed a sign. You don't do that shit. I'm going to segue to a funny story in a second about missing signs. But, look, you're asking a young player up there who, yeah, the bases are loaded. Yes, you're up. Somebody throws a goddamn grapefruit right over the plate, and he swings at it and he hits it. He's a good player. Fine, take exception to it if you want. Like, oh, you hurt our feelings because now you beat us by more. You were getting beat anyway. What the hell's the difference? So for me, I had the only issue I had was the exact same one you had, Pete, and that is, okay, he missed a sign. You don't do that shit. Speaking of missing signs, there was a kid when I was playing in high school, and keep in mind, our coach, he was like a Vietnam veteran, hard as nails, fair, but he didn't care who your dad was, how much money you came from, if you were popular or not, and he was a teacher in high school too. One of the best coaches I ever had. There was a kid that missed a sign twice to steal. He was on first base. Third pitch, and he's a third base coach. That's what your head coach usually does at that level. He says to the guy on first base, just top of his lungs, screams out, "Hey, steal second damn base!" Just tells him, yells it out loud. Steal second base, and the guy's like, "Okay." And then as soon as the pitcher just is standing on the rubber, takes off, and of course, they got him in a rundown, got him out. But I mean, that's what I remember. It is a big deal, and I've missed a sign before too, and I got replaced mid game. I thought I got the bunt signal, which I wasn't really sure, but I should have had him rerun it, and I didn't, and I laid down a bunt, and I missed it. So it is a big deal, even to the low levels. It's something you got to pay attention to. That manager obviously was aware that they were up, aware that it was a 3-0 count. It's like, dude, take a pitch. Take one. If he throws another one right down the gut, do what you got to do. But what is a batter supposed to do? Throw out a little slap hit just to not hurt the pitcher's feelings? No. Don't throw shit right down the. Or better yet, don't get yourself behind. Pitch better.
Right.
So.
And in this case, you're talking about a rookie manager,
Yeah.
So that comes from experiences, knowing when to, because as many frustrations as I have with him, Joe Madden wouldn't have sold one of his players out like that in public.
Yeah,
he would have pulled him aside.
That wasn't a good move. That wasn't a good move at all. You got to show that young player you're behind him all the way. I've got an issue with what you did. I'm not going to air it out in public. I'm going to call you into my office. We're going to have a talk about it, and I'm going to shield you from the media.
The coach is going to lose respect to some of the players too,
yeah,
which
absolutely
doesn't bode well for the team.
Nope.
I mean, I didn't have a problem with the swing on the 3-0 count. I mean, I thought it was. I mean, like you guys said, if you're going to throw a meatball right down the middle of the plate with this young 22, 23-year-old, his reaction at this point is going to be, I'm going to freaking hit this as hard as I can. And it's what he did. Now, the one thing that I did have a little bit of exception to was the next night when you're up big again, you steal third base. He did that on purpose, knowing everything that happened the night before, and that was kind of a prick move.
Yeah.
So
and I didn't catch that, Elliott, but there is.
He got thrown out, so it wasn't that huge of a deal. But he
kind of backfired on him.
Yeah. So
okay, so a little bit, a little slap fight there. I think it's a non-story in a week. Maybe some of those pissy pants Rangers players will never forget it. But Wilson Contreras would have knifed him. Wilson Contreras would have fought him. I don't know if you guys disagree or not. I think he would have fought him.
Oh,
he probably would have.
Wilson would have been waiting
Yeah,
Wilson
he would have
been
given him
waiting
a
at home
flat
plate with
tire.
a
So
clenched fist.
basically, Wilson wouldn't even have thrown the ball. He would have had the ball in his fist, ran down to third base after he slid in safely, and just decked him with it. What the hell was that? Was that you laughing?
What was that?
Yeah,
Somebody step on a
like
duck?
Greg Cody cough.
That was a Greg Cody cough. Okay.
But
Was that Braden's
that sounds like
face?
something. That sounds like something Sam would do to Will or something. Just run down and guard
I'm
him
sure
with
that
the
sock
ball.
goes into the dirty laundry.
The thing is, he's talking about his two younger brothers. One's 9, one's 7. Years ago, and Will is one that Will's the younger one. He's more. My older one that lives here, the 9-year-old, is I don't know. He's one that can stir up shit if he wants to. The younger one is just as big as him. He's got a little cooler temperament. Problem is, when you flip his switch, he gets no expression on his face, and he just comes at you. So
He gets shark eyes?
as I see, yes, exactly. There's all black, all pupil, and they dilate. But when I don't know what their age was, but the older one came down, petrified, jumped on the couch with me and said he's going to hit me with a truck. The other one came down, no expression on his face, just walked up to him and hit him with a truck. It's quite the scene. Doesn't happen every day, but just like, at least 2-3 times a week you get somebody he turns into Michael Myers. And not the comedian. Yes,
That's why he's got the cooler demeanor, because he knows that he will destroy his older brother.
Yeah.
It's that quiet confidence of knowing that when push comes to shove, you will die.
I'm going to remind you that I'm going to remind you that if I wanted to, I could beat you to death in 90 seconds. I'm just going to give you a little taste of it right now. I'm going to do 40% power.
I mean, there was a time where it was like WWE style when he took Sam's head and just banged
beat it off the floor.
floor.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, instinctively, the kid had never seen like an MMA. I mean, they were too young. They don't see stuff like MMA fights or action movies. But he had the instinct to take his brother's head and bash it off the floor twice before I got to him. Yeah, it can get ugly.
Quick reflexes.
Yeah.
What do you say, fellas? We wrap it up with a little bit of Schadenfreude.
Yep.
I don't have the tape, but late last night,
we all know what happened.
I've seen it. You got the alert. Thom Brennaman showing his true colors. Oh no! You got to be kidding me. Never, ever, ever say anything in front of a microphone that you don't want to get out there. I've learned that in working with Ron for 3 years. You got to watch your shit, man, all the time. Oh, I thought you were reaching for the cue. I can't believe that you didn't.
No, I didn't.
Ron, thank you very much.
Well, I heard about this last night as well, and we've heard about it all day long. Others have chimed in on it. I even sent out a tweet regarding it. Look, there's probably a handful of words that you just can never say, right? You could say derivatives of those words, maybe an innuendo, and you still get in trouble, but you don't have what's I think is going to happen to him. There's a couple sides.
I don't know if you saw it, but
Fox,
he's been pulled. Not only has he been pulled from baseball, he's also been pulled from the football game.
Okay, so and I didn't know about the baseball thing. I knew he was suspended indefinitely, but the thing is, you look at it, and there's two sides to look at here, right? And I want to be sensitive to both. And look, guys, nobody's looking at our podcast or our opinion and going to gain much from it, right? We're not influencers. We're not those people. The only thing we risk by talking about it is to say something stupid, because the only reason people are going to look at our opinion on this is if we say something wrong, not if we say something right. If we say something that's right, nobody's going to give a shit. We fuck up right now talking about it, more people will pay attention, right? So let's just be clear about that right now. Look, there are two sides to look at here. One, I don't think as a broadcaster, that is your office. That's where you work. We all work in a professional environment. You know there's certain shit you just can't do there. And we know the consequence of it. Doesn't matter your legacy, doesn't matter your tenure, doesn't matter how long you've been anywhere. There are just a handful of things. If you do them, you're probably done. And he slipped and he did it. He shouldn't have said that. It's an ugly thing to say. You know how these times are, right? And it's not even about the times, about you getting more trouble now because everybody's watching you. It's just something you probably shouldn't do anyway, right? So it was an
Yeah.
ugly thing to say,
Yeah.
ugly way to think. Now, there is a sad part to this. That guy's been broadcasting baseball for 30, 37, 33 years, something like that. He's been with Fox for 27. All that time, probably uttered millions of words and phrases on air. And nothing has, he's been fine. I mean, for all we knew of Thom Brennaman, pretty clean career. He has one moment last night, right? One moment, does something dumb. Anywhere near, Pete, you're right. Anywhere near a mic, what the fuck? Why that slip? But still, it's sad that somebody can slip like that and have everything they've ever done forgotten and wiped out. That sucks. Now, it also sucks for people that hear that have hidden their lifestyle or hidden the way they want to live and been afraid to talk about it because they've heard that kind of shit before. And when they hear it, just wanting to watch a baseball game, imagine how those people felt. So there's two sides to look at here. He's going to lose his job, and you know what? Perhaps rightfully so. I'm not the judge of that. But still, you look at the body of work, you're like, damn it. Something like that. You can say something like that, and it ends you. Doesn't matter how long. You look at that, and you're like, it's kind of, man, it's a I don't know what to say. It's kind of an outstanding thing that can happen, right? Like certain professions, you just one little slip, man, you're just done forever, and he likely is, and so there, it's sad on both sides. It really is. But I don't know what good you take away from this other than anybody else, young broadcast, anybody listening, like fucking learn from it.
Yeah.
Be careful. You know what? Think what you want in your own mind. When you act on it, or you speak about it in the wrong place, the wrong time, that's the consequence. So any young people that are getting into this, anybody interested in this, take stock of what's going to happen right now to this guy.
There's been some YouTubers out there who have done the same thing with some just as nasty words, and they have gone down for it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, as bad as I feel for Thom Brennaman for what happened, my first thought went to, does he always say that kind of shit when he doesn't think that the mic's on? I mean,
because it rolled off his tongue rather easy. It wasn't like a word he had to search for, right? I don't know if you guys disagree or not. But.
That was the thing. It's like when, maybe it's because they're kind of doing it in a different way right now, and he's just not used to the way things are because of COVID, and the mic got hot and he didn't realize it, and he was just talking the way that he talks when the mic's not on.
Well, let me say this, right? And Pete, I want to get to you because I'm curious of what you think about this, but we all think things in our head every day. There are people I've worked with over the years. I'd like to go up and just slap the shit out of them, right? I can think whatever I want between these two ears. If I act on it, that's a completely different story, right? And so, like, I can't vilify everybody for having their own thoughts and their own feelings and their own views on things. It's when you publicly air them is when you expose yourself. When you put yourself out there, you open yourself up for fair criticism from everybody. And you just, I don't know. It's sad that you can have a whole career, a body of work, and have one moment just completely destroy it. But that's where you put yourself out. If you're going to be a broadcaster and thousands and millions of voices are potentially going to hear you, I mean, you should probably be way more cautious. Think what you want in your own brain. Nobody owns that. You own that. But you put it out in public, man. And I know he didn't know he was, but you're around something that can catch every word you say. I don't care if there's a red button on or not. You want to think that way, fine. Go say that behind your own front door where nobody can hear you. Right? If you want to, if you're that worried about your career. If you're an ugly person and you act on it and you expose it to everybody, then it's fair game. So we've all said shit before in our lifetimes, guys. All of us have said stuff that has been wrong. Right? I'm not perfect.
I just wanted to let that hang there.
Yeah, I know. Go ahead, Pete.
I'm going to go back and clip that out. I'm going to add that to the intros.
I'm not
guys, I don't necessarily disagree with you at all. The one thing that I have a problem with, and I've expressed it both on the show before, and I've also expressed it off air, is that this only goes one way, right? Somebody could get on air and they could say that cops are pigs and there would be no blowback for it. They might get suspended for a game or two, but they would be right back on. They would not have their career taken away from them. And that's just the most immediate thing that springs to mind. And that's the problem that I have with this, is that it doesn't go both ways. I agree with you. What he said was abhorrent. He should have known better. And while I'm not the biggest Thom Brennaman fan because of the way that he's comported himself after he left Chicago, which gave him basically made him a national name, was being able to play for ultimately what was a national team. And he just kind of bit the hand that fed him early on in his career. Still, I don't think that this is fair, but it also is entirely within his employer's purview to discipline him as they see fit. And if they don't want to be connected to him anymore, then that's absolutely within their power. Mm-hmm. I just hope that they hold any other broadcasters who do anything similar with any other group. And I'm not talking about specially protected groups or minorities. I'm talking about any group.
Yeah.
If any other broadcaster singles out another group for any kind of derogatory term or phrasing or slur, they should be held to the same standard.
Yeah. Well, I think we can all agree to that. I think everybody does. And I think
I don't think everybody does.
No, you're
Ron.
right. You're right. That wasn't right.
And that's part of the reason why we are in I think the situation that we are now is because there's a certain segment of society that's like me, that's just thrown up their hands and said, you know what, I just don't care anymore. I don't want to be a part of this conversation because you won't listen to me.
Yeah.
Because if what I say is deemed wrong, then I'm a racist, I'm a bigot, I'm a sexist, I'm a homophobe. You don't want to hear out what I have to say. You just have enough of the soundbite.
Yeah, you're right. Wrong. You have enough of the soundbite you want. You're going to run with it, and that's politics. That's everything like that.
Right.
I think that that was the wrong way to say it. Not everybody agrees with that. Obviously not everybody agrees with that because that's how we got ourselves in the situation to begin with, right? So, I think where you're going, Pete, was equal, right? It should be equal, everybody. Yep. Anybody calls out anybody else, hey, you're going to fire one person for saying that thing as bad as it was, then anybody else who calls out anybody else, why are they not being held to the same standard? And I think you're right now we're in a time where, I'm not going to go there. Look, again, we don't gain anything by speaking our mind about this, even though I think I feel like all three of us here are on the right side of this. We gain nothing by being on the right side of it. We only get attention on our podcast, our small podcast here with few listeners. If we say something wrong, then we get attention. So I'm just going to stop right there. And not that I believe anything's wrong in my head, but we only gain negativity by saying the wrong words. So I'm just going to shut up, man.
I tell you, what a great way to end this lighthearted, semi-serious podcast.
We maybe should have just done that one at the beginning. Like we should have flipped the order around and just got that out of the way.
Yeah, we should have started with this. When we're not live on Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope, you can find us anywhere and everywhere. Our website is teamofrivalspodcast.com. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Team of Rivals Podcast, and we're also on Twitter at Team of Rivals Pod. You can send us an email at the show at teamofrivalspodcast.com. You can find Elliott on Twitter at
TOR_Elliott.
Or you can find Ron at
TOR_Ron75. Braden, you're out there too, right? Braden, aren't you out there too? He's asleep.
He hung up.
He must be. No, he's on. He's just not paying attention.
He's playing the show.
He is.
You won't find me on Twitter, so don't waste your time searching. And if you are watching us live, we'd invite you to also catch us anywhere you listen to podcasts, on Apple Podcasts or even Google Podcasts. If you love the show, subscribe, unsubscribe, and resubscribe. That ends up counting as 2 subscriptions until Apple catches up. And obviously, we want more numbers. After you've done that, leave us a review by going to ratethispodcast.com/TOR. Follow the simple instructions. And don't forget to make it a good one. Ron, you always wrap us up so well with your final thoughts.
Oh, God.
Anything you want to say to our followers before we call it a night?
You know what? I'm just, part of me is really happy we just have baseball back, although it doesn't look like tonight's going the Cardinals' way, but hey, whatever. at least we have baseball to watch, and we haven't for so long, and then had to take time off again. But regardless of how this all ends up, we got to play. I'm happy with that, and I'll just leave it at that, to be honest with you. I think it's a good conversation tonight. I know there was some an issue there that all of us, and we run the risk, us three, of running away from an issue like that and not wanting to talk about it, because that would probably be a better choice for us, because we're not Pete's elegant with words. I'm not. Elliott, I don't want to speak for you, but I think it's
dumb.
That's not.
No,
I
have to think about my words a lot talking about things like that.
We need a good half hour to figure out how to say it right.
Yeah, it's a very delicate thing, and I don't like going there.
Yep.
As an ex-bartender, there was 3 things I never loved to talk about: politics, money, and religion. And that kind of thing kind of intermixes in all that.
Yeah, I understand. All right. So thank you for everybody who watched on the live feeds tonight. And sorry we didn't get to a lot of the comments and stuff there, but we had some catching up to do tonight, to be honest with you. I know we haven't been on live on Facebook for quite a while, but we appreciate everybody who joined, everybody who listened in, and we'll do it again next week. So until then, we love you all so much. Bye-bye, everyone.